There is a concern with the Indian community, and only because there's been large numbers, and we can see that reflected in the way that the community votes for Labor at the same time.
In Australia and you are an immigrant, be wary of your safety on the 31st of August. Let your family members know, because there will be a protest happening in every city in Australia where people will march for and support the idea of mass deportation of immigrants. I don't believe this will be a peaceful protest. I believe people will be marching with banners with racial slurs everywhere. Mark my words, that's exactly what's going to happen. If your family members can't speak English, let them know that this is what's going to happen.
Australia is changing fast, but not everyone feels comfortable with that change. Across Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, a quiet tension is breaking into something louder, and it's directed at one community: Indians. In less than a decade, Indian migration to Australia has skyrocketed, reshaping suburbs, universities, and workplaces. Once celebrated as symbols of multicultural success, Indians now find themselves in the crosshairs of a growing backlash. What went wrong? How did a story of opportunity and progress turn into protests and fear? This is Australia's boiling point, where demographics meet politics and diversity meets division. 10 years ago, Indian Australians were visible, but not dominant. In 2013, just under 400,000 people born in India called Australia home. By 2024, that number had surged past 900,000, nearly 1 in every 30 Australians. They arrived as students, skilled workers, entrepreneurs. They filled classrooms, built tech startups, staffed hospitals, and paid taxes that kept the economy running. To many, this was the perfect immigration story: people who came, contributed, and called Australia home. But numbers have a strange power. When they rise too fast, they trigger something ancient: fear. August 2025, across Australian cities, thousands marched under one slogan: one people, one nation. To the organizers, it was a patriotic call. To others, it was a thin disguise for racism. Protesters carried signs warning of replacement, claiming too many Indians were arriving too quickly. One flyer boasted that Indians had done in 5 years what European migrants couldn't in a century. The message was clear: someone new is taking over. When reporters asked, "Are you racist?" one man didn't flinch. Greater than, "Yeah, we're proud of who we are as white men. We built this nation." That quote rippled across the internet, shocking a country that prided itself on being multicultural. But beneath the shock lay a deeper story, one that began long before the marches. Over the last decade, Australia's cost of living has exploded. House prices in Sydney and Melbourne jumped nearly 80%. Rental markets collapsed under demand. Trains, hospitals, and schools struggled to keep up. Economists pointed to interest rates, construction delays, and poor planning, but public anger needed a target. And migrants, especially visible ones, became that target. Online forums began linking India's migration numbers with housing graphs. Influencers claimed mass migration was breaking the system. Within months, anti-immigration videos were trending across social media platforms. Reality told a different story. Migrants, including Indians, contribute more to Australia's economy than they take out. They fill labor shortages in healthcare, engineering, and education, industries Australians rely on every day. But when bills pile up, logic often loses to emotion. Beyond economics, there's something more personal: culture. In suburbs once known for pubs and rugby, now stand Indian grocery stores, temples, and Diwali lights. For most Australians, that's diversity. For a few, it's disorientation. Online, clips of Indian weddings or street festivals are twisted into proof of invasion. Terms like replacement and loss of identity creep into mainstream conversations. The same narratives that once fueled far-right movements in Europe now echo in Australian chat groups. But those fears miss the truth. Culture isn't erased, it evolves. Indian Australians aren't outsiders. They're doctors, teachers, neighbors, part of the same national fabric. For many Indians in Australia, these protests weren't abstract politics, they were personal. Some students stopped wearing traditional clothes in public. Parents warned their children to avoid speaking Hindi or Punjabi on the train. Temple leaders increased security after online threats. One Melbourne resident told reporters, "Greater than, we came here because this country promised equality. Now, we feel like strangers again." Government leaders condemned the hate rallies, calling them un-Australian. Police boosted patrols, and diplomatic talks between Canberra and New Delhi reaffirmed India's trust in Australia's democracy. But fear doesn't vanish overnight, not when it's amplified every day online. Australia isn't alone in this struggle. Across the world, nations are grappling with the same equation. Rapid migration plus economic stress equals political tension. In Britain, Germany, and the US, populist movements use similar language: protect our jobs, save our culture. It's a playbook as old as modern immigration itself. But if we strip away the slogans, one truth remains. Migrants didn't create these crises, policy failures did. When governments fail to build enough homes, expand transport, or plan for growth, frustration finds an easy scapegoat. Blaming Indians may be convenient, but it solves nothing. Every nation faces a moment of reckoning, when it must decide what it truly stands for. For Australia, that moment is now. Will it allow fear to define its future? Or will it honor its legacy as a country built by immigrants from every corner of the world? Because in the end, this is not just a story about Indians in Australia. It's a story about belonging, identity, and the fragile promise of equality. If you found this documentary meaningful, take a second to like this video, share it, and subscribe to Documentaries Home. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter, the ones shaping our world right now.